Welcome to The Finance Files, a podcast hosted by myself, Whitney Coford, and my best friend, Brittany Carter, with occasional appearances by my dad, Greg Coford, and other guests.
We talk about all things finance, including investing, trading, economics, capital markets, and business management. Learn the investor mindset with us.
Disclaimer, this is purely for entertainment purposes. It is not financial advice. Please make sure to do your own research and make your own decisions. All right, so for today's Think Like an Investor Thursday, I thought maybe, Dad, you could kind of talk us through, I think maybe Brittany and I can pretend that we have no retirement plan, and maybe you could kind of talk us through what we should do and what steps we should take.
Sure. Well, the place I would suggest that someone start is they need to think about what kind of life they want to have in retirement.
Okay, so Britt, what kind of life do we want to live in retirement?
Well, we've talked about a few things, including we want an animal sanctuary, right? And like slash farm. in the,
so we are planning to have an animal sanctuary and live on a farm when Brittany and I turn 65.
Okay. So what you need to do is figure out how much that's going to cost you a year to live the lifestyle you want to have in retirement. And how many years do you think you're going to last?
All right.
We're going to live at least 100, Wet. Triple digits for sure.
No, I don't think I want to live to be 100, man.
No, with the way technology is going, I feel like we'll be like hundo and thriving.
All right, just to make the numbers even, let's just say 85, so it's 20 years, okay? But hopefully longer.
I'm living to 100, but we can go with 85 for now.
Okay, and let's say our animal sanctuary is going to cost us $100,000 a year, just to.
Oh, it costs more than that.
Well, this has to include all your living expenses.
Yeah,
you're putting together basically your annual budget to live, survive, and do what you want to in retirement.
Yeah, I feel like, I feel like if I had $100,000 just coming to me that I didn't have to do any extra work for, I feel like I could make that work for a pretty good animal sanctuary.
Well, I feel like, how big's the
today? No, I don't know what it's going to cost.
No, that's the thing, because one, we have to count in inflation, and then two, while I do want this annual sanctuary, I also want to be able to travel like 2 months out of the year.
Oh, we need a bigger travel budget.
We have massive travel. The travel budget might be bigger than the animal sanctuary budget.
Okay, so should we call it 200,000?
So low. I feel like we're gonna need at least $500,000 a year.
Oh, jeez. Oh,
at least minimum. That is like
okay, $500,000.
So once you figured out what your annual budget is, you're currently thinking in today's dollars.
Yes.
And like Brittany pointed out, you got to factor in inflation. So then what you need to do is say, okay, if we're going to retire in 20 years, what's it really going to cost us in dollars in 20 years? And so you've got to assume an inflation rate over the next 20 years.
But how do I know what inflation's going to be? Nobody knows the future.
You have to make an assumption.
Oh, all right. Can I look back historically?
You can, but it might not necessarily be indicative of the future.
All right.
We know that the Federal Reserve is trying to target a 2% rate.
Okay.
And I don't see that changing for the foreseeable future, because there's an economic value in the mind of most economists of having a little bit inflation, but not too much.
Okay. And if I want to plan conservatively, because I'm a type of like plan for the worst, hope for the best, then if I'm planning, would I want this to be a lower inflation rate?
No, you'd want to assume a higher inflation rate.
Okay.
Because that means it's going to be more
expensive. Because then the value of my
future.
money is less, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so let's just assume a 5% inflation rate.
All right, so then what you would do is you'd say, okay, so $100,000 today is equal to, at a 5% compounding rate, X amount of dollars in 20 years. So that means that in reality, what you're going to need in 20 years is $222,000 for the first year. And then
Okay.
that obviously is going to continue to go up each year.
So it's the 220,000 is based off of our original
100,000
100,000.
today at a 5% inflation rate means you really need to have $222,000 to live your hoped for lifestyle in 20 years, assuming a 5% inflation rate.
That's brutal. That sounds so overwhelming. Okay. So once I've figured out what I want my life to look like at age 65 and how much I need to save.
Yeah, so now, well, we haven't figured out how much you need to save yet. We're only at the point of saying what you need for the first year of retirement.
Right.
Okay.
220. Okay.
So now you've got to calculate out, okay, if inflation continues at 5%, then the next year I'm going to need 232,000. We're taking 222,000 times 1.05. So that gives me a 5% increase. So inflation, if you're assuming 5%, would be $233,000 for the second year.
Okay, and then I'm just gonna have to do that math for every year for the
Right.
20 years that I'm planning for.
So that
Okay.
you'll know. But
Also,
in
real fast, we will be providing a calculator. So if your head's already spinning, we will have something that does the math for you. You do not have to sit and manually do that on your phone calculator. We will help you.
so
That we want
once
it-
you've figured out what each year is going to cost you,
Right.
then you need to say, okay, what is the amount of money I need at retirement to have that kind of cash flow? And so you can
Right.
create a discounted cash flow of that two and eventually $400,000 a year. And then you say, okay, so my grand total for retirement needs to be this much.
Okay, so let's say grand total for retirement, we're gonna need just say $2 million. We've done all the math
Okay.
and that's wrong, but let's just for
Sure,
this,
sure.
let's just say 2
So
million is
then,
our
so,
grand
so
total.
what? So if you need $2 million in 20 years, then you need to do the math coming back to today and say, here's how much I can afford to invest each month, because you're going to need to invest every single month, and you're going to have to assume a rate of return on those investments. And you'll be able to say, okay, if I invest X amount each month, and that can increase both because inflation's going to push your wage up and presumably you become more valuable, so your salary goes up even more than inflation. So you can afford to invest more as you go along. And you'll have to make
That's actually-
assumptions about that.
Okay, so that's something I want to touch on further is the assumption that your salary is going to increase and keep up with inflation or hopefully exceed inflation, right? So the company that I used to work at, they would always do cost of living raises, but they never, it was always a set percentage. I think it was like 3% or something like that. But they never adjusted the cost of living to match inflation. And
Right.
so it ended up being that we were getting raises, quote unquote, because like, yes, a dollar amount, we were getting more, but we weren't actually keeping up with inflation.
So
Right?
inflation was obviously greater than 3% in those years.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's something I think people need to pay attention to, and especially if you're going in to ask for a promotion or a salary increase or you're negotiating, right, for a new job, you want to make sure you're taking inflation into account, because if inflation is 6% and you're only getting a 3% raise, well, you actually are now losing out on money, right?
Well, and this is also where, like, I think people are like, oh, I want it in my savings account. The stock market's risky. It can go down. But the fact of the matter is, if you stick your money in a savings account, like, do the math. Like, actually put your money in at, like, even the interest rates are kind of on the higher side right now. Like, do the math. It's the amount of contributions you will need to make to get to the retirement level is so insane. Like, you are going to constantly be running behind, right? Whereas if you put the money in the stock market, yes, you need to diversify. Yes, the stock market can go down, But if you look at historical trends, if you diversify appropriately, you can beat inflation. And we talked about, oh, inflation's going to make it so much more expensive, but the interest is going to make the value of your stock so much higher, right? And so it's really important to you can't just rely on cold hard cash to plan for your retirement. You want to make sure that your money is working for you so it's able to beat inflation and hopefully do some of the grunt work outside of whatever job or business you decide to run.
Okay, so going back to our planning for retirement discussion,
Right.
I guess like Brittany, so are you saying like we should look at the stock market outside of a retirement account?
What? No, your retirement account is investing in the stock market.
Right. Okay.
Like most 401ks and stuff, you have to sometimes have a specific unfortunately if you do like an employer like an employee 401k, they're gonna only have select funds you can work with, right? But you are still technically investing in the stock market. It's just that someone's managing it for you a lot of the time.
Right. It's a nice set it and forget it. My favorite.
Yeah, well, and it's really cool too. A lot of them will have like I'm going to retire by X date, and it will kind of adjust what stocks you have in that portfolio, like the closer you get to retirement, so it's less risky and you have less volatility in your portfolio.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Dad, let's say that I can only afford $50 per month
Right.
to start, right? Do you think putting that $50 into a retirement account, is that a worthwhile thing to do?
As compared to putting nothing in a retirement account,
Yeah. Like,
anything
what if
is
I just
better
put
than
the
nothing.
$50 in savings instead?
But and that's why it's important to do the math that we've been talking about. Is if you're dreaming of this pet sanctuary, and when you do the math, it requires you to at your current income level put more money into retirement than you can afford. You need to be cognizant of that fact and have a plan to increase your income so that you can put enough to hit the goal that you've set for retirement. Or in some instances, the retirement dream isn't going to be a reality. In other words, if your dream is to have, a 400-foot yacht that costs 200,000 or $200 million, to just have a bare bones thing, and you aren't super wealthy, that's probably unrealistic.
Yeah. So you might have to temper your
Yeah,
retirement dreams a little bit unless
yeah,
you
yeah. You might just
hit the
say, "Oh,
lottery.
oh, I'm going to go on a $1 billion boat as a cruise client."
Right. Oh, there you go. Maybe get a little more creative with your retirement plans.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so in summary, do the math is our Think Like an Investor Thursday
Well,
theme.
I think too, have a vision for what you want, right? Work backwards. And I
True.
think that's
Yes.
helpful too, because then it's a lot. It's kind of sucks to be like, oh, I'm putting this money in retirement. I don't get to use it now. But if you have a clear vision of, hey, if I want this animal sanctuary, I did the math. It's got to go in there. It's a lot easier, right? So I love, Greg, that you started with that. Like we want to start with the vision of where we want to be.
Right. Well, and I think too, I mean, it's kind of a sobering point to think like, oh, I might not be able to achieve my dream retirement at my, current contribution level. But then on the flip side, I'm like, all right, well, maybe that's a good motivator, right? Like if I think through, okay, this is my vision, this is how much, I've done the math, this is how much I'm going to need. And I realize like, oh my gosh, I'm not making enough money in order to achieve that long-term dream. Well, then I'm going to need to change something, right? I'm going to need to go out and, whatever it is, find a way to make more income or change the vision, right? And so then it helps kind of motivate you now in order to achieve some of those longer term goals. And that is the investor mindset. Plan for the long term and do the math. All right. Well, join us tomorrow for Fundamental Fridays, where Brittany and I will walk you through kind of the calculator and how to kind of think about these things for yourself. Thanks for joining us on the Finance Files.